And now our first speaker, Walter Shaub, Senior Ethics Fellow at the Project on Government Oversight, on the need to create a government ethics records database.
Great. Hopefully I'll succeed in sharing my screen here. Sorry, I'm having trouble. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you re-enable that?
I am just going to give our expert on tech, Taylor, a minute to fix that.
You are good to go.
Perfect. Thank you, Taylor.
All right, here we go. And I don't know how to minimize this thing to get it out of the way for you. There we go. Okay, sorry for that delay. I'm Walt Shaub from the Project on Government Oversight, and I want to talk to you during this lightning round on the need for a public government ethics records database. And we begin by looking at the state of the law. There are ethics laws that give the public a right to access several types of records. These are public financial disclosures, waivers, certificates of divestiture, travel records, and those are available specifically under specific release statutes. Other documents like ethics agreements are accessible through FOIA. If you go to OGE's website, you'll actually see financial disclosure reports of nominees and appointees to Senate confirmed positions. That's PAS for presidential appointee to a Senate confirmed position. In the colored brackets, I've indicated the source of authority for that. That's the Ethics in Government Act. You'll also find ethics pledge waivers, ethics agreement, and ethics compliance certification forms. Now, OGE has proactively posted those under the Freedom of Information Act, which is important to remember because my point is going to be that they can do that with a lot of other types of records. They also post certain travel records. These are records of reimbursement from outside sources for official travel. Now let's talk about the problem with the current structure. One of the issues is that lots of documents exist, but you don't know they exist. For instance, there are 2.1 million civilian federal employees, and neither I nor any of you have any clue which of them have received conflict of interest waivers, allowing them to participate in things that affect their financial interest. You can access them, but only if you file a request with the issuing agency. Even though OGE has a copy of it, the law doesn't allow OGE to release it directly. So you not only have to know who has a waiver, you have to know what agency issued it. The public has no way to know when they're issued. And to give you a frame of reference, there were 409 waivers issued just last year. So if we talk about the last 6 years, you're talking about 2,400 waivers. Except for Senate confirmed appointees, requests for financial disclosure also have to be filed with the employing agencies, not OGE. And there were over 26,000 disclosures filed last year. Agencies received only a little over 500 requests for disclosures last year, which means that the public is not seeking these disclosures. And part of that is because agencies are slower to respond than OGE is. OGE has largely automated the process, and you'll often get a disclosure that you request from OGE within a couple hours. Another problem is that at the end of each administration, White House disclosures go directly to NARA before the public can ever see them. Let's say a departing White House employee quits on the morning of January 20th. Well, they have 30 days to file their disclosure, their termination financial disclosure. So they file it in February, but by then, NARA is already seizing all White House records. So the public never even has an opportunity to request these. And that's because NARA says it won't release them under the Ethics in Government Act. They say that's the White House's responsibility, but the White House no longer has these records to release. And for instance, the Biden administration doesn't have any Trump administration disclosures to release in the first place. So they're available for 6 years, but you can't get them. This fall, POGO persuaded NARA to agree to post all of these on their website without even requiring a request under the Presidential Records Act. NARA hasn't done that yet, and they say it's a slow process that'll be completed sometime next year. But even then, the public won't know to go to NARA's website to see these. Many records are available only through the Freedom of Information Act, and we all know how slow that is. Last year, DOD, for example, had 22,000 pending FOIA requests at the end of the year, which is a 22% increase over the prior year. And there's no guarantee that the ethics waivers are going to be released. Beyond that, the public has no idea when these ethics records have been issued. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say a general or a senior agency official is invited to attend the Preakness Stakes. That's the horse race a week after or 2 weeks after the Kentucky Derby, where an agency contractor is hosting a reception in a party tent. By the way, this one's not a hypothetical. This one actually happened. The agency ethics official makes a questionable decision to let the official not only accept the free attendance at both the reception, but also the horse race. The public didn't know it happened, so the public didn't know to file a request for the written authorization that the agency ethics official gave to let the person attend essentially a party thrown by an agency contractor at a horse race. So there's a solution we can do, and it's not going to cost anything. This is one of the rare times when Congress, or frankly, the administration, could solve a problem at no extra cost to the public. They could create a centralized ethics records database. OGE already proactively releases some records online, as I said, under FOIA, which I flagged earlier. The Senate confirmed ethics agreements are an example. And in cases where the law requires a written request before the agency can release them, as in the case of conflict of interest waivers under 18 U.S.C. 208, OGE can leverage an existing system that it's already built that automates the submission of requests and processes responses. In fact, the process would be fully automated, except that when I was at OGE, we were afraid we would make news headlines if Bart Simpson or Mickey Mouse filed too many requests. So the process is fully automated, except that a human just has to review the response before hitting release. And if anything looks weird, call the person. But it's an almost fully automated system. I don't recommend we do this for all 2.1 million federal employees. I think the target group could easily just be non-career, meaning political appointees, non-career officials at the GS-15 Senior Executive Service, presidential appointee, or presidential appointee in a Senate confirmed position, including SGEs, special government employees. So that is a universe of roughly probably 6,000 or 7,000 people as opposed to 2.1 million people. And it would be all of their ethics records except for records of individual advice. And the reason to exclude those is the entire prevention system, that is the ethics program, depends on people voluntarily coming for advice. And if they knew the records of that advice would be released, they would just stop coming, and then we would have more ethics violations. So I think that's a reasonable exception. And I also think the scope of all political appointees at the GS-15 level and above gives the public access to the people with the most power to do harm in the government. The benefit is it increases the public's capacity to monitor ethics officials by giving them a centralized and frankly much faster source than individual agencies for public access to ethics records. It also solves the problem of the public not knowing what records to request, because even in cases where you have to submit a request, there would be a list on OGE's website, as there is now, for the list of records that you could request. So you would see, for instance, a written authorization under 5 U.S.C. section 2635.502 or under 2635.204, the gift rules, for written authorization to attend the Preakness Stakes, and that certainly would pique your interest. It also has a benefit to the government because it increases the public's awareness of systems in place to protect government integrity by giving the public access to these records. And it gives the public access to copies of White House disclosures before and after the originals go to NARA. So we don't have this problem every 4 or 8 years of White House records being seized by NARA and left unavailable to the public. Interestingly, although some ethics officials are likely to complain, the truth is the overall burden on the agency is reduced because agency FOIA officials won't have to process FOIA requests for any of these records. It would simply be a proactive process that when an ethics official creates the record, they submit it to OGE. Agencies would be responsible for any redactions, which would avoid a strain on OGE's tiny staff, but it would also give the agency control over the things they want to redact. And then a member of the public, if they wanted to challenge that, could file a FOIA request and sue over any redactions. OGE might even be able to create an automated portal for agencies to post these records directly to the database without OGE's involvement. While I was at OGE, I talked to my computer staff about it, and at that time, they felt fairly confident that they could build this system. And finally, I have two more slides. The next one contains a list of records that should be included. Now, I really don't want you to feel overwhelmed and feel like you have to be able to read this. The goal is really to show you how many types there are, and I can always release a copy of this slide so that you can see it later if there's interest. But this is the list of records that could be kept in the ethics records database. It's quite a long list. You see it fills this entire page. And I want to show you in the next slide which of these things are actually currently available online. Boy, that's a big drop off. Again, here's what we want, here's what exists, and it would cost Congress and the administration absolutely nothing to create this, other than minimal additional staff time. So thanks, that's my pitch for an ethics records database.
Thank you, Walter. That was a very